All right, and now we are recording. So just to kind of repeat for the recording, this workshop is called So You Want to Add Technology to Your Face-to-Face Course. My name is Amanda Dills. I'm the instructional technologist here. Before we started recording, we kind of had the room go around and talk about, introduce themselves and say what burning question it was that brought them to this workshop today. And a lot of people are really interested in tools and kind of specific things that they can add into their course. And that's kind of the question I get the most often as an instructional technologist. I get the question of either, oh, Amanda, I want to come see you. I need to put technology in my course. Or, oh, I need some ideas. I want you to tell me where to go. And we're definitely going to answer that today over the next 90 minutes. You'll get to test out and try and have information on a lot of different tools that you can add into your courses pretty easily. But even more importantly than that, I think, is figuring out a way to get to technology and making choices about what technology to use in a way that's really going to serve your students and fit into your course. And so one of the things you're going to hear us talk about a lot in CETL is these kind of different categories of workshops. You're going to see things kind of have badges on them, and we'll be putting things into different categories. And I don't want to get into that in too much detail, but with workshops, we're going to be putting those into categories based on the content. And we have two categories. One is design and one is technology. And while you might assume that this workshop would just immediately go into that technology hub, we're not going to be doing a lot of how-tos as far as this is how you use particular tool, this is how you use quiz, this is how you use whatever. We'll show you those, and I'll kind of point you towards resources for all of the things we try. But really today we're going to be talking a lot more about design and how can we sort of make choices about where and when and how to use technology rather than the like click here kind of thing. So that's kind of our opening. If you like to follow along with the slides, one of the first elements when you get to the course, if I just backtrack for a minute, when you get there in the content area, you're going to see a module called So You Want to Add Technology to Your Course. And within that, there's going to be a lot of different elements. You're not going to see exactly what I see. Oops, microphone. That was going to happen. You're not going to see exactly what I see because you've got a student view as opposed to my faculty view. But where I am right now is starting with this Haiku Deck slideshow presentation. Haiku Deck is kind of an alternative to PowerPoint that you may want to consider using in your course. Really the main benefit, I think, of Haiku Deck as opposed to PowerPoint is that you can embed it in a document and students can't really download it. I've gotten that question a couple of times about I want to put up a PowerPoint, but I don't want students to be able to download it. By embedding it through Haiku Deck, they don't have that download capability. So that's the technology I'm going to be using to go through our slides today. And you're welcome to follow along if you like. Our objective for this workshop is that, Our objective for this workshop is that by the end, you will have created a lesson plan. Seriously, it's getting excited. You'll have created a lesson plan that will use this kind of maximized lesson plan format that we're going to talk about today, and then it's going to incorporate at least one out of class and at least one in-class technological element. So by the time it is all done, that is the thing I am hoping that you will all be able to do. How we're going to get there, we have an introduction. We've introduced ourselves to one another. I've talked to you about the objectives. I have a survey that you're going to figure out and we're going to complete really quickly to kind of get everybody on the same page. Then we're going to dive into the content of this workshop, which really is kind of this maximized classroom lesson planning technique and how we can incorporate technology into that. We're going to do that through a family Feud game that you're all going to get to play with me. Then we're going to check and see how much of that content you retained. And so we're going to do a digital worksheet that'll be through a Google form. And then we have a group project that you're going to complete. We'll kind of divide you up into some smaller groups. And then we'll do some feedback about sharing and talking about that, and then we'll wrap up. So this is scheduled to be a 90-minute workshop. We got a bit of a late start, so hopefully we can get through it all and still have you out of here by 1:30 at the very latest. That is my goal. Okay? Any questions before we start diving in? Is everybody able to get to the D2L course shell? Yes, Ashley can get one for you. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ashley. And in the meantime, you're welcome to look off of a neighbor, or if you have a phone, you can get to these things on your phone as well. Any other questions, logistics, issues before we dive in? All right, and like I said, in addition to talking about this lesson planning technique, we're also going to just be sprinkling tools throughout. So that's why you notice I said we're going to use a lot of different kinds of tools. These are all suggestions for things you can incorporate pretty easily into your course. All right, so the next thing that we're going to do, the way we're going to start thinking about this topic, is we're going to do a poll everywhere. It should be this next link down right after the slideshow in the content area. So when you click on it, it should look something like that. It should say lesson planning survey, and there's a button you can click on to start the survey. Go ahead and do that, and I'll have the results pulled up on the screen. Yes, please. Let's take a look. Is it not letting you click on it? Okay, scroll down to the bottom right below it. Oh, we don't have a pop-out. Let me change it so that you open it in a new window. I know somebody's gotten there, but let me tweak the link. Might be a browser issue. I'm going to click it so it opens as an external resource. So if that's the case, it should take you to a new window, and then you should be able to get into it without a problem. So with Pull Everywhere, just to talk about that tool for just a second, it's a surveying tool that you can use to get responses in real time from your students. It allows you to see, quick questions to answers. You can have them do multiple choice. You can have them do typed in responses. There's a lot of different ways that you can actually use it. On your device, it should look something like this, where you're telling me how long you spend on a survey, how many technological elements you normally use, et cetera, et cetera. You can also get there by going to pollev.com/AmandaDills055 if you have trouble getting to the direct link. Oftentimes when you do this in class, you'll just have your students kind of go to that Pull Everywhere classroom, and then they'll be able to pull up that survey. Yes, 055.
Amanda, do we have a university license for Pull Everywhere?
No, I'm just using the free version. So what you're seeing on here is the free one. The one limitation to Pull Everywhere is that you can only use it for up to 40 people. At OCU, most of our classes fit within that parameter, so it's generally not a huge problem. But if there is an instance where you need a lot of different responses, this is not going to be the tool for you. A tool that you might prefer is going to be ones that we'll look into later, which is Google Forms is one I recommend, or the D2L survey tool is another option that you can do as well. All right, for some reason, trying to get to the results. Here we go. So right now, I'm just going to click through these just to kind of show you what the most common response is so far. I know some of you are still finishing it up, but how long do you generally spend planning for a single class session? So far, everybody has said 30 to 60 minutes. I don't know if that's one person or if that's everybody filling it out, but that seems to be pretty standard. Ideally, we want that amount of time to be as short as possible, don't we? So hopefully, if we can kind of give you a framework and a template, we can even kind of speed that process up a little bit. Let's go to the next question. Come back. How many out-of-class digital elements do you normally use? So what I mean by that is things like a quiz or having students do things out of class. It looks like we've got kind of a nice variety. Most people, I'm guessing that's probably 2 of you, don't use any. That's the way, in my opinion, that you can really increase your, your efficiency. because you set up some of these automated tools to do the work for you outside of class, and that really is going to free up some time in class for you to do the things that maybe you're more passionate about. So that's really kind of the lovely side effect of going through this process. And then how many in-class digital elements do you normally use? Most people are saying 0 or 1, okay? So in addition to sort of streamlining your process and giving you a format that you can use, we hope to kind of bump those numbers up just a little bit. With the caveat that's saying I would never encourage you to add technology for technology's sake. Sometimes people think that that's something that you need to do. There's maybe only one scenario where I would encourage adding technology for the sake of technology, and I would call that the like 3/4 semester slump. When you have that moment when your students have everybody's tired and you kind of need to revitalize your class in a certain way, that might be a time when it's time to bring in a Kahoot test or something of that nature, something new in technology, just to kind of get everybody kind of re-excited and reinvigorated. And I've done that myself, and it definitely is something that can kind of give your class a shot of adrenaline when it gets to a point in the semester when it gets kind of drudgy, which can certainly happen. So we've kind of gotten you to think about the things that you're using. We've done our kind of introduction, and now it is time to get to the meat of this presentation, which is going to be these elements of lesson planning that you can use to incorporate technology. So let me click to the appropriate slide. Nope, not that one, sorry. Here we go, boom, boom. All right, so we are actually going to play Family Feud. This is something that we're going to do to go over this content. A really fun way you can inject technology into your course is to deliver your lecture or your content through a game or some sort of kind of digital mechanism. This Family Feud template, I provide you the link on the handout where you can actually download it. It's one that's available free on the internet. As you're going to see, it's going to look a whole heck of a lot like the Family Feud game if you've ever played it. So, it was on the desktop. Downloads. I lied. Nope. Yes.
In the wrong spot. I have this. It says Family Feud.
Mm-hmm.
It's got the number 4. It doesn't seem to go anywhere.
Yeah, so when you click on it, what you're going to see is it links to it in a Google folder. You can actually download it from that page. You don't need to worry about that right now. I just sort of provided it as a resource. But that's what we're going to go through, and that's what we're going to actually play. And it was supposed to be saved to this desktop, and I don't see it. There we go. So if you were to download this onto your device, this is what it would look like. There we go. All right, and this is just a PowerPoint show. So we'll click begin. And we're going to see if we can come up with these steps together. The question we're asking is, what are the steps or the elements that make up a maximized lesson plan? You should have a handout. Okay, just stole yours. But it's the handout that looks like this, okay? Feel free to fill this out as we go. These are the 8 titles or the 8 things that we're going to be figuring out in our Family Feud board. We're all going to play together like we are the same family, okay? And so we may or may not go in the proper order, but my question for you, and this is for anyone in the room, is when you're thinking about planning, you're in teaching, and you're taking an objective from kind of start to finish, okay? What are the different pieces that you think about that you need to include in your teaching?
I think you're going to have to give us an example.
Give you an example. Okay, so, yeah.
Instructions.
Instructions, sure. So we're going to say, just to get us started, instructions. I'm going to click on the second one, which is content, okay? This is the stuff I am teaching. I am delivering the information to you. You are going to absorb that information, okay? For some people, that's all they think about teaching, that all it is, right, is just delivering knowledge into people's brains. But because we are all awesome educators who are at a CETL workshop, we know that there's maybe some more elements into that, okay? So in addition to just providing your students with the information and a lecture, what are some other things that you're going to do with that information before the students have mastered it?
How much they already know.
How much they already know. I'm going to call that the introduction, okay, which is what we did when you did that survey. All right. For introduction, what I think about that being is what the students are doing, kind of in that second blank that you're going to need to fill out. That's when the students start thinking about the topic. You see what they already know. You see where their knowledge is. It can be an attention grabber. It can be something kind of fun, but it's whatever you do to introduce the content, okay? Sample activities, which is the third column on your worksheet if you want to fill those out, might be like a pretest or a survey or a question or a poll or an experiment. Okay, there's lots of different ways you can do it, but the point is that before you get to the content, which is when you're actually providing your, the information to the students in some way, you need to kind of set the stage for that content, okay? For the content, sample activities might be reading. They might be reading the text. They might be watching a video, watching you lecture. They might be listening to a recording. There's all different ways that that content can be absorbed. And then you'll notice what I have filled in for you then are D2L tools that can supplement that particular phase or that particular element, and then some third-party tools which are just basically like non-D2L technologies that you can use. So when you're thinking about how you want to plan your lesson, this is going to give you some suggestions on how to do that. All right? After we've introduced the content, what's another thing that we would want to do with our class? Reinforce. I'm going to call that number 4, and I'm going to call that development, okay? And what I consider development is all of the other good stuff that we do, right? It might be an activity. It might be a group project. Anything where the students are interacting with the content and they're interacting with each other in order to get a better understanding and mastery, okay? That might look like a discussion. It might look like an experiment. It might look like some hands-on activity. It might look like a practice that you do all together in class. Basically anything that you're doing with your students or your students are doing together to just sort of deepen that understanding, okay? Before that one, I want to spend some time talking about number 3 because it's the one I don't know that anybody will say, but it's one that I found is so important, especially if you're getting into like a blended or a flipped classroom model, which is kind of what we're talking about here. And we're talking about taking elements of your course and putting them onto D2L so that students can do them before and after. When you do that, something that I think is so super important is what I call a content check, okay? And this, I wouldn't necessarily call it an assessment, but it's a way for you to ensure that your students got that content, all right? I'm doing one right now when I look around the room and I'm looking for like nods or smiles or puzzled faces or things like that. In a face-to-face environment, we probably do it automatically. We might ask the students to reiterate or something like that. But it's really just having a chance for you as the instructor to make sure your students actually got that content somehow into their brains. When it comes to technology, oftentimes when people do like a blended classroom approach, they will maybe introduce the topic before at the end of one class period, and then students go home and they read a chapter or they watch a video, and then they're supposed to come to class and discuss. Well, if we skip this step number 3, we don't necessarily have any way to ensure that the students read or that the students watched or that the students, got that information into their heads in some way. So things that work well for a content check, it might be just a very simple D2L quiz where you ask like very low level questions, like something like what are the 3 topics that this video talks about, or something like that. I mean, we're not asking them to really think too much about it, but we're asking them to just show that they were paying attention and to prove that they got it into their brains. So content check is one. If you take nothing else out of this, if you can figure out a way to use technology to do a really quick and easy content check after your students have read, that's going to be something that's really, I think, going to increase your effectiveness when you're teaching. So that's sort of the presenting of the information, right? After we do that, what do we have to do with our students? What's like the next step? Interact, yeah, I would put that in the development piece, but can you get more specific about what kind of interactions you're doing?
Collaborative interactions, students and students.
Put all that under development, yep. What do you do after that? What? Yes, evaluate, feedback. All these next 4 things kind of come into the sense of feedback, okay? So we'll click through all of them and then we'll talk. So the first one is I would call formative assessment, okay? Kind of the same as the content check, but rather than happening immediately after the content, this is what is going to tell you as the instructor if they're getting it, okay? Oftentimes this might look like a first draft, or it might look like having the students do like a worksheet or something that's kind of low stakes, but it's a way more for you as the instructor to get feedback on how the class is doing, and then for the students to get feedback on how they're doing and how close they actually are to mastering this concept, whatever it is. So it might be that they, like I said, a first draft of an essay or something of that nature. Once they turn in that first draft of that essay, what's the next thing that's going to happen? Feedback, yeah. And I'm calling it feed forward just because of where it is, because you're actually giving them information that they can then use to go forth. Okay, so the student submits the first draft of an essay, you do some sort of feedback to them that says, okay, now for your final draft, you want to do X, Y, and Z. Okay, then after that, I have summative assessment and final feedback. So that would look something like the students does the final draft of the essay, and then you give them their grade and tell them why they got the grade they got. Okay, so these 8 elements are the ones that I consider to be kind of the essential elements of taking an objective from something students have no idea about to something that they're really confident about. And when you're thinking about adding technology into your course, rather than just thinking, okay, I want to add a discussion board, where we're really trying to go with this is go, okay, I need some way for my students to do a content check outside of class. What can I use? Because that's going to narrow down the technology tools that are available to you, and it's going to kind of give you a lot of clarity about the tool that you're going to use and why, okay? Any other questions or thoughts about this? And before I say that, I do want to give the disclaimer that you may not use all of these steps for every objective, okay? You may reshuffle them a little bit. This is not to say, I'm not telling you that for every class and every topic that you have to go through all 8 steps, but chances are over the semester you probably will, even if you don't think about it like that. So this is something that can be very adaptable and very changeable, okay? Questions, thoughts, reactions? Yeah.
Where do you put lecture?
Lecture. Content. I would absolutely call the lecture content. So that content can be delivered in any way. It might be kind of like I'm doing right now, where this is sort of a free-form lecture a little bit, but it could be a very traditional lecture. It could be a lecture and a reading and a video. I mean, it could be a lot of different things, but I'm calling all of that content. Pretty much anything that you would put in the content area of D2L for your students to absorb in some way, that's what we would call content. Great question. Anything else that you're thinking of that may not fit into one of these categories?
A different thought. The development kind of sounds to me more like an application tool.
That's
For
a good word.
nursing,
I like that. Yeah.
For nursing, we provide all the content, and then here you get an opportunity, and the examples kind of go hand in hand, the simulation and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
You get an opportunity to apply the knowledge. So
Yeah, I like application as a word, an alternative word for that. That's really great. I kind of see development, and you'll see this when you get to the handout I'm going to hand you. Development is probably the biggest, kind of most varied aspect of this, because you're going to have students interacting with each other. There's just a lot of different ways that you can do it. So that will depend on, discipline and things like that. But yeah, I like application is another really good word for that area. I think I'm using development because coming from a music background, when we think of like sonata form, we have like the introduction and the development. So that's probably where my word choices are coming from, but I like application as well. Other questions or thoughts? Okay, so now that I've provided this content to you, we're going to do a little content check to see how much of it you actually retained. So this is the next element that is in the D2L course shell. If I click here on my slideshow, it's going to say content check, planning elements, okay? To do this, I use one of my favorite tools, which is Google Forms. I discovered I like Google Forms. You'll notice like when you fill out to sign up for a workshop here in Seattle, you use a Google form to do that. I don't know if you knew that that was what you were using, but that's what you're using. I've used them when I teach in just a lot of different ways. So if you've never sort of been aware that you were experiencing one, that's what you're going to get to experience now. So if I go back to Workshop Elements, just to show you what it's going to look like. When you click on it, you should be able to access the form right there within D2L, and you should be able to fill it out. If you have problems with that, let me know. What this form is asking you is it's asking you to think about a successful lesson that you recently taught, and then you're going to identify, okay, in that lesson, and when I say lesson, I mean like taking an objective from start to finish. So it might be over a couple of days, it might be over a week, it might be over a month, whatever that is. And then thinking about how you incorporated those 8 elements within your lesson. So go ahead and take a few minutes and fill out this Google form, and I'll pull up the results and we'll take a look at them. Interesting. What browser are we using? Safari. Okay, let me make that one the same that it'll open up in a new window and you should be able to get it. Okay, it's probably the computer, but we'll give it a whirl. So go ahead and refresh, try it one more time. On Wi-Fi. You may have to just look over with Ashley. It's probably just the computer. Sorry about that. While you're filling that out, I'm just passing out a handout that we'll use in a minute. So you don't need to worry about the thing I'm handing out yet. In the faculty reading room, there's a Keurig. Yeah. She wants some coffee. as you're pulling this up, you can see kind of one of the really fun features of Google Forms is that it allows you to pull up unlimited responses in real time on a screen. So the way you go about doing that, you create your form, which is just pretty intuitive. You put in questions and how you want people to respond. And then it gives you a link that you can give to your students to fill out that form. And then in your Google account, which is where you've created it, then it gives you an option to see responses. And you can either see them in kind of this chart view, or you can see them you can have them downloaded to a spreadsheet and pull it all up in spreadsheet view, which if you're doing any sort of, I don't know, intensive data analysis is where you're going to want to pull that up. So take a few more minutes and just finish going through the survey, and then we'll just kind of skim through the results. And so far, I'm seeing lots of digital tools, which is very exciting for me as the digital instructional technologist. I don't know why it took so long, but there you go. I can. It won't increase it for you, though you'd have to do that on your computer, but fun fact, if you didn't know it, if you hit Control+ on a computer, it's going to increase the size and the font of your browser. Control+. Yeah, and Control- will shrink it down, and then Control-0 takes it back to normal. So for situations like this, if you want to kind of quickly zoom in and zoom out, and it's not something you can control the font of, which is the case for Google, just zooming in and out in your browser as far as the magnification level can be really helpful. So Control, or probably on Apple, it's probably the Command key, +, -, and then 0. Kind of those 3 keys in the upper right-hand corner will let you play with the size of the font that you're looking at. For those of you watching the video at home, you may want to either fast forward or else we'll cut this part out. But you should also be doing the content check survey along with us if you are doing this, watching this outside of the workshop. That's okay. No, a lesson that you did. Okay, you can do it again if you'd like. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Looks like we've got 6 people responded. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We'll give it just another minute or so. Talk to me, give me some feedback on what do you think about using Google as a check tool? How do you think you might use that in your course to use like a Google Forms for a content check?
I have used Google Forms, necessarily not as a content check, but after the development or they get the opportunity to hear the content, it's more like a survey for me. Like, do you understand what was the hardest part of it? Which could have been changed? What would have been helpful? So some basic questions that would fit with any content, I used to send them out after every lecture for a whole semester. I tried that.
Yeah.
That was very helpful.
Yeah, I love it. So if you couldn't hear, she was using Google Forms as like a survey tool to kind of check students' understanding and what did you like and what didn't you like. I would be remiss if I didn't put in a plug for the fact that the idea tool that we've just implemented is going to allow you to do that as well. And you'll be hearing lots more about from Ashley about that throughout the rest of the semester. But Google Forms is a really great way if you just kind of want something quick and dirty or if you want something specific that you can do that. The thing I like about it, I would have my students like when they had to do a reading or watch a video, and then I would ask them just some basic questions just so I could see how much they knew. You know, I could see like, did you get the thing? It also just holds them a little bit accountable. A tip that I would give you, if you include this in your D2L, if you ask students for their name, obviously you'll know who completed what. If you want it to be anonymous and you don't want responses tracked by student, if you put it as a link in your content area, then D2L will at least track who's clicked on it. So anything that you link in your content area, even if it's to an external tool, if students click on that link, you can at least know who clicked on the link. It won't tell you that they did the thing that they had to go do, but it's a way at least you can see, you know, that you'll get that they clicked on it. And then you just tell them you have to do this to get a grade. I can see who did it, even though I can't see your responses. And then you don't tell them that you can only see who clicked on it. So that's a really fun tip with Google Forms. Let's just kind of do a scan through your responses. Lots of out-of-class digital introductions, kind of an even mix on lesson content, which is kind of what I expected to see. Out-of-class analog is probably a little bit trickier, but that would be like a book. Like if you're having them read a book, that would be out-of-class analog. That's what I would call that. For the content check, out-of-class digital, again, kind of a nice mix there. Development, a lot of digital stuff, both in class and out of class. Formative assessment and feedback, all digital, which is kind of cool. You know, that's things like your quizzes and your worksheets and your Google Forms. Summative assessment, what form did it take? Again, a lot of digital out of class analog. Something I would encourage you to do is to think about the things that you do, since we're not really seeing any analog out of class things pop up on the list. You know, think about how you can have students do that. I love assigning homework that sort of forces students to get away from their computer. And while this might be still considered digital, anything that you can do to get them like out in the world when they're outside of class and interacting with your course content someplace else than just on their screen is really, really kind of cool. So I've had my students like, they have to take a picture of them doing something on a piano, or they have to, you know, go do this thing and take a picture of it. And yes, that's still digital, but at least it's forcing them to get out into the world and to do things. So, you know, if you haven't done whatever one of those categories you haven't done anything in, you know, really start thinking about maybe is that something that I can add? Is that something that would be beneficial? Yeah? Any questions on this Google form and this content assessment tool? The next phase that we're going to dive into is actually kind of practicing this and putting these elements into a plan for kind of a fictional course. So any questions or thoughts before we dive into that? All right, so I handed out 2 new worksheets for you. The one we're going to start with is this Maximize Lesson Planning worksheet. It looks kind of like this. In a few minutes, we're going to divide you into groups, and you're going to work in groups to sort of create a lesson plan for a fictional course. Before we do that, I just kind of want to model what that's going to look like for you. We're now in the development portion of this learning experience, okay? And so can somebody imagine that you're at an improv show? Somebody give me a topic as random as you can come up with for a topic that you might teach a lesson on. Oh, you're going to give me one that I actually have to know stuff about. Okay, I'm going to pretend I know about photosynthesis. All right, So in that case, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go through this and I'm going to come up with an in-class and out-of-class option for each of these elements that I could do as part of this photosynthesis topic and objective, okay? We're going to make it really basic, and in this case, we're going to say that our objective is to learn the definition of photosynthesis, because I don't know much else about it. So we're going to say that for right now, okay? So our objective is to learn the definition of photosynthesis. As you're doing this for realsies, when you're doing it for your own courses, you may not need to do a face-to-face and out-of-class option for everything, but if you can come up with one, I would encourage you to do it, and the situation that we may have on campus on Friday is a really good example of why you kind of want to have both ideas in your brain, because there's a chance that we're going to have a nice day tomorrow and people aren't going to be able to be in class. And I know there's some people whose classes only meet on Friday. And so they've already been talking to me about, okay, what can we do to actually have this class in a not face-to-face format? So thinking about those things just gives you a lot of options. So to kind of go through this in a quick fashion, I want to make sure my microphone is still close enough. The introduction for photosynthesis, a face-to-face option, I might just show a picture of something photosynthesizing and say, what is this? All right. And I could do kind of the same option outside of class. So in a not face-to-face option, they could still show a picture. And then maybe the students could do a discussion board where they guess what it is, right? That would be just an introductory activity that could happen outside of class. For the content, okay, the definition of photosynthesis is my topic. So face-to-face, I can do a mini lecture on what is the definition of photosynthesis. Just so we all know, Adam, can you give us like a lovely one-sentence definition of photosynthesis that we can use for this purposes?
Conversion of light energy to chemical energy.
The conversion of light energy to chemical energy. Beautiful. You just gave us our content in a face-to-face manner, okay? If he wanted to deliver that not face-to-face, what would be some options that he would have?
There are lots of videos with rhymes and bands that I played for my daughter.
Video, rhymes. He could type it in a document and the students could read it, right? It could be in text somewhere. This is an area where you can get really, really creative as far as how you deliver that content. And it's really just picking things that work for you and are going to be the most effective for you. So we've got our content check. Okay. So how can we check that the students know or that they were paying attention? All right. I might ask them to, if I was doing it face-to-face, I would ask Gracie to repeat what was just said. Okay. Can you repeat what he just said for the definition?
Photosynthesis is conversion of light energy to chemical energy.
Brilliant. Bravo. The content check was great. Now, because this is such a simple objective, that might be the end of my lesson, right? Like that might give us all that we need to do. We're going to expand it in kind of a silly fashion just for the purposes of argument, but you know, if we get to that point, that might be all you need. In a digital format, I might have them do an open-ended quiz where I just ask them the question and they write it in. Okay, that might be a way to do that. That's something that I can auto-grade. All right, then we get into development, and this is where we can get a little bit of silly and we can have a little bit of fun. We might do an experiment where they, I don't know, watch photosynthesis happen or some sort of simulation of photosynthesizing, or we might have them create a dance in which they are acting out the photosynthesis process. So I like that one. We're going to say that. We're going to say our development is a photosynthesis dance. All right. What we would ask them to do outside of class if they didn't have, you know, we can't have them dance if they're not physically all together. So it might look something like, oh, plant a seed. I love it. Okay. And we might do both of these too. That's the one really great thing is if you come up with options in both categories, if you find you need more development, you can do both. It doesn't mean you have to pick either one. Okay. Formative assessment, that's going to be maybe the performance of the dance, right? So perform, dance. And maybe this is, the formative assessment is just take a photo of your plant.
Talking about taking a series of photos.
Sure. Sure. Take a photo series. I like it. Formative assessment, all right? Feed forward. My in-class scenario, they've performed their dance, and then we all rate them with the like signs like Dancing with the Stars. So that would be kind of a feed forward. And maybe if you give them a score under an 8, you have to say one thing they could have done better, right? So I'm just going to say Dancing with the Stars paddles and comments. All right, what that might look like in this sense is it might look like you as the instructor, you look at their video story or their picture story that they've created, and maybe you record a little audio feedback for them that says, hey, I saw your photo story. I don't know that putting the plant in the aquarium with all the fish is probably the best plan for photosynthesis, or whatever that is. So we're going to say recorded audio that they can do outside of class. And then maybe for the summative assessment, we're going to ask them to take an in-class essay test where they have to expand that definition to be 400 words. Okay, we can do the same thing out of class. It could be the exact same assignment, just kind of used through a digital medium. And then the final feedback would be the grade and comments. And that could happen either place. Okay, so that just kind of gives you an example with kind of a silly topic about how we can use these elements. Now we're going to give you a chance to try this, and we're going to do it in groups. So if we say maybe you 3 together, maybe the 2 on the back table, you 2 gentlemen, and then you 2 ladies are my groups, okay? To do this activity, we're going to show you, we're going to use a fun app that's called Brainstormer. And the Brainstormer app is going to have us assign topics for our groups. Is my Mac thing still on? Give it a minute. I have an Apple TV hooked up, so bear with me here. That could be. Do. Come on, wake up. There we go. We got it. All right. So what this app allows us to do is it allows you to do random combinations of things, and that so like groups can be assigned random combinations. So all right, so here's our app. And what I have here is different categories of things that are going to be combined. So in this first wheel, this is how many lessons, class periods, your group is going to have to deliver the content. Okay? In the second row, it's how many students are in your class. And in the third row, it's going to be your topic. Okay? So we'll start with our table over there. I'm going to touch this little dice icon. You're going to start with using the Maximize Lesson Planning worksheet. Okay? And so spin the wheel. I'm going to get some sound. All right. So my first table, you're going to have one class period to deliver for your class of 11 to 15 students, and your core subject is pants. So any sort of objective you want to do for that core subject, that's what you guys are doing. Okay? My back group, there's what the sound effects are. You're going to have 2 class periods for your class of 26 to 30, and your topic is a favorite TV show. So any TV show that you both are familiar with, that's what your lesson's going to be on. My gentleman in the back, you guys have 2 class periods, 6 to 10 students, and you're also doing a favorite TV show. Okay? And then my ladies in the front, you guys have 2 class periods, 6 to 10 students, and your topic is plagiarism. So you get kind of a serious topic. Okay? So what I want you to do, don't take more than 10 minutes to do this. I want this to be something you can do kind of quick. With your topic, figure out an objective that you need your students to understand, and then figure out both a face-to-face and an out-of-class option for a way that you can do all of the different elements for that topic. Okay? Take about 10 minutes to do that, yeah? Go wild. For those of you that are watching this, I'm just going to spin this a few times. Pick an option. Go wild. You might do 3 class periods talking about juices. There's juices again. There's 2 class periods for a favorite TV show. 1 class period talking about the perfect road trip. You might do 2 class periods talking about critical thinking. That'll give you some ideas. Feel free to do the worksheet that says maximize lesson planning worksheet and go ahead and fill that out while the participants here in the room are filling that out. Yeah, we gave a costume or the pants topic, didn't we?
Well, if you're really going to go back to the beginning, we have some links, right?
And then that can be the same thing.
This could be a narrate. Marinate.
Got 2 more minutes to finish up. Take about 1 more minute. Mm-hmm. Pants are very important. It's true.
Amanda had some very nicely creased jeans on yesterday. Nice.
I did. They had the pleated jean.
I always love a really nice.
I love it.
I didn't say that yesterday.
No, They were good pants. Thank you. All right, let's bring it back together. You might just be finishing up, but I think most people are getting pretty close to the end of the list. I want us to share a little bit. So we'll do it kind of having people share pieces. So we'll start with the introduction. And so my pants group, what were your 2 different introduction options?
We were going to have our class model the pants that they have and then have a quick discussion on all the different styles. We're trying to help all our students identify different pant styles. So, and then online a picture of the different pant styles that they could review.
I like it. My TV show group number 1, what was your content in both categories?
A brief lecture on the image of nurses in popular media.
Ooh, I like it. My second, did you have a video or an online version?
The same.
Just like a recorded lecture? Okay, very cool. My second TV group, what were your 2 content checks?
After we showed, we identified, we selected a Dr. Phil episode.
Dr. Phil episode, yep.
And after, the content, when we identified, the problem that he was talking about,
Uh-huh.
and wants to do counseling on that, and what he addressed, we asked the students, to fill a quiz and tell us what it was all about. So.
Great. Having students do a quiz that talks about the Dr. Phil episode that they watched. Yes. And my plagiarism group, what was your development?
We were going to make them work in groups. They love that. And they're going to be researching specific types of plagiarism. So we will give them a one to research, and they're going to go research it.
So having different groups do reports on different types of plagiarism. Let's go one more time around to finish through our 8 categories. Pants, what was your formative assessment?
We are going to have them do a draft submission of a new type of pants. that they
Ooh.
come up with.
The students have to come up with a new type of pant and submit a draft. I like it. And is that both digital and face-to-face? All right. Dropbox. Love it. Love Dropbox. All right. My nursing TV show group, what was your feed forward options?
Peer evaluation and critique of 2 TV pilots that they are developing.
Ooh.
Shows nurses in a positive or professional aspect in one which misrepresents the health profession.
I like it. Peer responses is a really great way to do feed forward. That's a good way you can sort of minimize your workload by having students do the evaluation and the response for you. That's a really great thing that you can do. Yeah. Yeah, and you'll find a lot of these work in both formats. It's just a matter of picking the right tool. My Dr. Phil group, what was your summative assessment? Describe the results of the counseling. So kind of do like an essay sort of thing that they submit. Very nice. Yep. And my plagiarism group, what was your final feedback?
They're great.
They get a grade. I mean, that really is oftentimes what it is.
We'll do an exam review too, so they know where they went wrong.
I love that. That's a great idea. So doing an exam, they get their grade, they get a review where you talk about things as a class. That is great. We have the most...
We are going to.
It's the pretend one.
Just have them turn something in to turn it in.
There you go. You got to get 0. Yeah, what do you have to do? No, I love that. So other things to keep in mind, obviously when we're doing it in kind of a hypothetical fun situation, we don't really have to think about any limits or things like that. Obviously you have to think about how many class periods that you have. I heard this group going, oh shoot, this is way more class periods than we're going to have, right? So you want to think about what is feasible. Also, when you're thinking about tools, hopefully by going this way, we sort of avoid a little bit of the shiny object syndrome where, ooh, I want to use this what is it called? Brainstormer app, and I got to figure out a class to do that. Hopefully we're avoiding that a little bit. But there are a lot of different new tools that you can use. Just as a general rule, I recommend probably not trying to adopt more than like 1 new D2L tool and 1 outside of D2L tool per semester, unless you happen to be a super techie person who just, that's your thing, right? For me, I tend to throw a lot of different things in kind of experimentally, but for most faculty members, that's not your main focus. So picking one or two that you can kind of use consistently throughout the semester is going to help your students and it's going to help you. So when you're thinking about this for realsies, you definitely want to just be aware of that. So the next step, right, once we've done this, is we have to actually map it to the amount of class periods that we have. And so that's the second worksheet that I handed out. On one side, there is a single lesson and a 2-lesson organizer. And on the back side, there's a 3-lesson organizer. And if you'll remember, when we spun the wheel, you either had 1 lesson, 2 lessons, or 3 lessons. I do have to apologize. They were supposed to be color, and I couldn't get them to print in color. But so imagine that the face-to-face segments are yellow. That represents what you're actually doing with the students in class. And then the white segments represent what they're doing before and after. Just to show you what that might look like, here's an example Padlet that you'll see that is linked, oops, come here, that you're going to see linked in your, in the D2L shell. And in that, we have, I just took this Padlet and kind of tweaked it. Oh, I'm not logged in, that's why. So, hold on. These are all things that if I was logged in, I could move around. But the idea is you've got these different pieces and you can shift them, right? So it might be the case of I'm starting this here on this in-class day, so this is where my introduction happens, right? And then I might do my introduction and my content check all in class, because that's how it fits together. Or it might be you have them do some before class, some in class, and some after class. So take just like 2 or 3 minutes with your group and just see if you can fill in however many class periods I assigned you. And if you don't remember, just pick. It's fine. But see how you might stretch your lesson actually mapping it over however many days of class that you have. So go ahead and take a few minutes to do that. I'll log into this Padlet just to show you how that would work.
Well, we have the before class, the face-to-face and after class. Maybe we have this. We can check this and ask them to repeat it. Right, and then they come in their clothing and we have them play a game in class. So this would be like before class. And then we have them do this little quiz. And do this.
Yeah,
They
it's
don't draft.
Face-to-face one, face-to-face two.
Well, and this. In class, is it too much? And then that would be, after class, they have